Horses Now podcast, your go-to source for all things horse racing. I'm your host, T. Gridge, and always I'm joined by the one and only Kenny McPeek. Kenny, what's up, my man? How are things?
Good morning from Saratoga Springs. We're finishing up our summer here in New York.
Yeah. Well,
we have one more week to the end of the Saratoga meet, so we're still at our Saratoga base. And it's beautiful up here right now.
Well, I tell you, you had a beautiful past weekend. So what an exciting race. Kenny, I can't wait to get your thoughts. Thorpedo Anna was absolutely brilliant. It's not often that the people that are announcing the race and the people that do the commentating, they were over the moon. I mean, they were just like, oh my God, she certainly didn't lose this race. I mean, it was pretty crazy to hear how excited everyone was.
I haven't seen the broadcast, of course, but it was exciting. Can I tell you I like being second?
No,
I don't like being second.
Yeah.
The day that I enjoy being second, then I'll probably retire. But very proud of her race. I mean, a lot went right. She did everything right. She's obviously, justified the fact that we ran her there. Yep. There was the fair share of naysayers, but she's the queen now. I mean, she's an amazing horse, and we're still elated. And she's come out of the race good this morning. She jogged a mile, galloped a mile here at Saratoga, awesome. And so we were able to get her back and get a saddle back on her and give her a little spin around there. So I was real happy with the way that went.
So 2 more strides, I think she wins, right? I mean, it's right there.
Yeah, well,
she ends up passing right after the finish line.
But give credit to the winner. He ran the race of his life as fast as he'd ever run. It took all that to beat her, and he ran a little further than we did. So I think on the Trackus, which are these chips that they put in the horse's back, the GPS, the race. Fierce just ran the furthest distance. So he was no question the best horse. But just throw with her effort and. It's a real honor to be involved in these kind of horses and these kind of races.
What's next?
I'm pretty sure we're going to go to Parks with her. There's $1 million race on September 21st in Philadelphia, and
that's
we'll
pretty
get her
quick,
teed up
isn't it?
for that.
That's pretty fast.
It's straight fillies too, so it'll be a lot easier race than what you just ran in. But as long as everything goes right over the next month, we got I think just under 4 weeks till that race, so there's plenty of time.
That's awesome. Well, she certainly didn't disappoint. Was there an amount of pink there that you would hope for?
I was expecting a little bit more pink, but that's okay. I had mine on, and there's actually today they're arguing over hats. Everybody wants hats.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, the Thorpedo Anna hats with the grizzly on them. That's been in high demand. I probably had 20, 30 requests for more of them. They gave away, I think, over 1,000.
Wow.
And they're available online. It's millridge.com, which is a farm in Lexington who does some consulting work for the partner. And he's one that set up the site where you can order, what is it? What do they call it? Swag or
merch.
Merch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
I think I retweeted it somewhere, but I'm sure that's the best place. There's a couple of counterfeit sites out there, so be careful.
Okay, well, that's always the case. One more question on Thorpedo. I've never seen this before, and her name's escaping me, but the commentator who actually rides on a horse and talks to the jockeys after the race, she went up to the winning jockey, and she said, I'll be honest with you, I'm not real happy I have to talk to you because I was pulling for Thorpedo, but you ran a great race. And I thought it was interesting. There was just so much... I think everybody was pulling for it. It was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, no, it was very much a battle of the sexes to some extent.
Yeah, it was for sure.
Yeah, but Maggie Wolfendale, she's been a fan of Thorpedo from the beginning, and she watches her close, and she knows her well.
Yeah,
because that's her job to analyze horses in the paddock for these big races.
Got it.
But Maggie does a great job, by the way.
Oh, yeah, she's fantastic. Fantastic. All right, today's podcast, we're going to dive into pedigree and bloodlines. I got a lot of questions lined up here for you, and I think our listeners are going to get some valuable information here. So let's start here just with the basics. Can you explain what makes a horse's pedigree so important in racing and breeding?
Well, the thoroughbred is a hybrid animal in the sense that they're there are bloodlines that come from all different angles. Of course, you've got the mother and the father, but a lot of really talented horsemen analyze the pedigree through generations. And so you have not only sire lines, but you also have broodmare sire lines.
Yep.
And horses, the way that they're bred is unique in the sense that you will see patterns of what I'd call top line dominance, which is sire lines, or female bottom line dominance, which is broodmare sire lines. And so when you're analyzing a pedigree, you need to learn who are the top sires and which sire is more influential. And some sires are more influential through the female lines. And it's a real, I guess you could say it's the art of looking at a pedigree and being able to try to understand where a certain horse's looks and frame and talent come from. 2 books, and I'm going to throw at everybody out there.
Okay.
Matriarchs and Patriarchs. So if you go on Amazon, you can look up Patriarchs. It's a big, thick book, but it talks about sire lines. And it gives you the history and a lot of the details about sire lines. Matriarchs gives you the female lines. And so for someone that's wanting to dive in and learn more about the thoroughbred, those are 2 excellent books. I think I've recommended in previous shows Speed in the Thoroughbred, which is the first book you should read. But Matriarchs and Patriarchs is a fantastic reference book and gives you a real idea of where the bloodlines are coming from and their influence.
You know, every podcast, Kenny, you're recommending books. It seems like that's something you probably spend a lot of time on, is reading and kind of diving deep into this.
And I keep 2 libraries at home. I keep a horse library, which got about every horse book that you could ever imagine that a horse trainer would be interested in. I either purchased or was given to me. And then I keep what I'd call the me library. You know, my mother always gave me advice when I was young. She said, son, everybody's got problems in life. And somewhere somebody probably wrote a book about it. So that's always been something that I always gravitated to, and I've saved all those books over the years. I'm trying to get my daughters to read them all.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Makes sense. Okay, so obviously you've talked about top line, bottom line. What is your personal philosophy when it comes to breeding, and are there specific traits or bloodlines that you prioritize?
Well, speed makes a big difference. You have to find what I call an injection of speed someplace in the pedigree. When you're looking at the sire lines, usually sire lines are speed lines. They're not stamina. And so when you're reading a pedigree, you want to say, okay, where's the speed going to come from? And then the broodmare lines, or the broodmare sire in particular, is for me very important because it brings an injection of either class or stamina typically. But it also can bring in an injection of speed as well. So Secretariat's one of the best examples of a horse that he's pretty easy to explain where it all came from. So he's by Bold Ruler, which is a classic sire line.
Yep.
Bold Ruler was by Nasrullah. Nasrullah's by Niarco. This is all Tessio. These are Tessio sire lines that came from Europe.
Okay.
So Bold Ruler was a bay horse who won the Preakness. Secretariat was a chestnut horse who obviously won the Derby, Preakness, Belmont. But Secretariat had more traits of his mother. Mare's named Something Royal, and she was by a sire named Prince Aquila. Prince Aquila wasn't a speed stallion. He was a stamina horse. He won at long distances. But Bold Ruler was more the speed influence. But Secretariat's bloodlines seemed to really push stronger from the bottom line than they did the top. So when he became a stallion, he wasn't a successful stallion when it came to colts. He wasn't his father's son in the sense that he didn't have that speed gene, or he didn't pass it. he passed the stamina, but not the speed. So when you look at his female line today, Secretariat's daughters and their sons and their daughters all extend back into the pedigrees, and they're still successful. So you can see the Secretariat influence on the bottom line come through even today, and he passes that to really good horses. I could give you a list of horses. AP Indy, Secretariat mare. There was a multitude of good horses that came from that line, but Prince Aquilo is where the blood came from, and Bold Ruler was the injection of speed, and obviously they produced a great racehorse. So when you're breeding horses, what you want to do is you want to have that top line speed injection, and then you want a bottom line class stamina. And on occasion, it'll be flip-flopped, where you get the speed on the bottom and the stamina on the top. The horse that comes to mind for that was John Henry. John Henry was by an obscure stallion named Old Bob Bowers, but he was out of a Double J mare. Double J was the speed influence. So you can still get a very good horse if you flip-flop it, but you've got to have speed coming from somewhere.
Man, it seems like a pretty complex game. I mean, you've got to really know what you're doing there when it comes
the key is visually seeing a lot of the horses and what they look like and how they ran, and remembering how they ran and how they were made. So I'm a real lucky guy. I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, heart of the horse country. Wasn't necessarily from a horse family. Found the pedigree side of this very interesting. I was taught early on. My dad mentioned it. Sire lines, broodmare sire lines. I can remember, talking about, who was on the top and who's on the bottom, and some broodmare sire lines that I remember: Buck Passer, Prince Aquilo, War Admiral, Mahmoud, one of my favorite horses ever.
Yeah.
But so when I went to the University of Kentucky, I was a classic C+B- student.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that in the ag library of the University of Kentucky was every Thoroughbred Times, Thoroughbred Record. These are all periodicals or magazines, and Blood Horses ever printed. So as a freshman, I stumbled on this, and I read every issue before I graduated.
That's crazy. UK. That's awesome. What a
cool
story.
And in the issues, you could not only see the pedigrees, you would get stories about how they ran, and then you would get photos of the horses. And then when you're looking at a pedigree, I can recall that line and where it came from. Or reading an article about Mahmoud winning the English Derby, or when he was bred by the Aga Khan. Talk about an outfit that breeds fantastic horses.
Sure.
The Aga Khan. And Mahmoud was actually a reject stallion coming from the Aga Khan. And his influence in the United States racing is still happening today. But this is something that I just got interested in. And today, as a horse trainer, I utilize a lot of that. When I see my horses train, I usually know who they're by, who they're out of, what kind of families they're from, what their propensity would be: turf, dirt, sprint, short, long. So a lot of that's really important, and that's part of learning about the thoroughbred.
So I know you're really good at picking out yearlings and going into these sales and identifying what horse could be a good racehorse down the line. How often do you get into the actual mating process of trying to put these top lines and bottom lines together?
I do the matings for probably 15, 20 mares every year. I did the mating on Mystic Dan.
Ah, okay. Well, that one worked out.
Oh yeah, no, we cooked that soup from start to finish.
That's awesome.
Bought the mother, raced her, did the mating for him. We foaled him at Magdalena and raised him at Magdalena, and look at him today. Very, very proud of that work. So, and there are people out there that do this for all the time professionally, and I don't do it for as many people, although I find it very interesting. Breeding horses is probably one of the most difficult things to do, but I'm trying to give you a good analogy here. When you're breeding horses, not only do you need the bloodlines to look right, you want to breed like to like. You don't you don't breed, and this is probably a funny analogy for some people. You don't breed a beer bottle to a wine glass,
Right.
because you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
You breed a wine glass to a wine glass and a beer bottle to a beer bottle, and that is a silly analogy, right?
No, but I got you though. It makes
But
sense. It's a good
you
visual.
understand, you need to breed like to like so that the physicals match, and then you get a more predictable foal when that foal hits the ground, and then you've got to figure out whether that horse has enough speed and stamina to win the type of races that you're hoping. So yeah, a lot of it, there's very very you know deep detail in a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
this.
pretty intricate. Have there been many instances where you've seen a horse, or maybe you've done a mating process where the pedigree is just awesome, and on paper you're just pumped, and all of a sudden the horse just doesn't live up to any sort of expectation at all?
Well, it happens all the time. I mean, I think that too many horses are probably being bred on paper as opposed to the old animal husbandry where the actual physicals. I mean, there are still some very, very talented people that know physicals and get an idea where they need to breed, but too many computers are making these decisions, in my opinion. You can do crosses where the cross, well, they analyze how the crosses have worked, and that okay, has the Seattle Slew line bred to a Prince Aquilo mare been successful? Has oh, I could go on Northern Dancer to Bottom Line Roberto, things like that. They analyze all that, and that gives you an idea of whether or not it's worked before. So there is some sort of pattern there, but it's also very unpredictable. There's an old saying. Somebody says Mrs. Lewis had 11 sons, but only one of them was Joe.
Yeah.
Or Mrs. Clay had 10 sons and only one of them was Cash, right? And so even if you breed back to somebody's phone was ringing in my ear here, I'm gonna turn them off.
There you go.
Even if you breed the same stallion to the same mare, you're gonna get a different version every time. It's not predictable all the time. You hope, but it's that's the hard part about breeding horses.
I have to ask, and listen, I know not all of our listeners are Kentucky based, but if you are Kentucky based, you probably heard of a basketball player, a kid named Reed Shepard, had a pretty good year for the University of Kentucky last year, and his bloodlines were really good, right? His dad and his mom were both excellent basketball players, but that it doesn't always work out. That just because both your parents are athletes, that the kid is an athlete. Now, how does this relate to kind of humans on the horse side? You guys are getting better results on the horse side. You've got a better idea what's going to happen than when two extreme athletes have a kid, right? Or is there some similarities there?
But Reed Shepard is a good example of two athletes and produced a really excellent athlete. I do think it matters. I think that you have most of the sires are already athletes, or they wouldn't be standing stud.
Got it.
And then the mares are a little bit more difficult to figure, because when the mares, you can have unraced mares that produce very talented horses. You can have raced mares that are top race mares that don't produce talented horses.
Sure.
So it can go either way, but like I said, that's the hard part about breeding, and there's no exact science to it. I don't think you can do it genetically. You do need the speed factor somewhere, though.
So you're a little bit old school in that aspect, but I have talked to some people that think that you can get some results through genetic testing. And I know there's been advancements in analysis on how to take some of these stats and these genetics and breeding them more through a computer than they are from, like you kind of would probably do, in a little bit more of an old school manner. Is that working at all in your eyes?
Well, okay, there's something called there's a gene test called, they check for the speed gene.
Okay.
And what you don't want is a horse that's what they call a router 2. There are 4 gene markers in the thoroughbred, and they're either yes or no. Speed gene, no speed gene, speed gene, no speed gene. So if you get what you call a horse that's a router 2, that means they have no speed gene in any of the 4 genetic markers. However, if you get a speed gene on the top or the bottom, then you've got a chance for that horse to have speed. And there are certain sire lines that throw off speed genes, and there are certain sire lines that throw off the router 2, the no speed gene. And so we went through a period of about 5 years drawing the genetic markers or pulling hair and blood on all our young horses.
Okay.
And what we found was, yes, if they didn't have the speed gene anywhere in the 4 markers, that those horses typically could not run. And you could, like for me, visually, I can remember when I had what I'd call a router 2 or a horse that had no speed gene, I remember watching them closely, especially their physical and their movements and how they present themselves. Those horses didn't have enough speed and weren't typically top level horses. So it is a tough deal.
So you're looking at that a little bit. You're looking at those genetics a little bit. You have to.
Yeah, but I'm getting better at eyeballing them too.
Okay.
I can look at a horse and almost tell you whether they look like they don't have the speed gene.
Makes sense.
And I actually haven't done the markers in a couple of seasons. And I've got a mare named Jewel Princess that is she was a router 2. She had no speed gene at all. However, she won 3 stake races in her career, all coming from off the pace.
Wow.
And then we bred her to speed, and she had her first winner day before yesterday.
Okay.
And that winner has speed.
Gotcha.
And but the stamina can be good, but they've got to be very efficient if they don't have the speed gene.
So you mentioned a horse earlier, but I'm curious how much international influences there are when it comes to bloodlines and pedigrees. I know the Saudis are big into it. I know obviously it's big in Japan. How much influence do these international horses have here over in America?
Great question. So once again, you're trying to find outcross speed. So today, the sire that's becoming a huge influence in North America is Candy Ride. Candy Ride was a South American horse. He's actually descended from Mr. Prospector on the sire line, but he has the Argentinian female line. He's got an extended Mr. Prospector line. When I say that, it's not a line that you see regularly here. He's through crypto clearance and a horse named Ride the Rails, but he was exceptionally fast, and his female line comes from the family of Candy Stripes. And he's come to North America as an outcross speed horse and been very, very influential. You can go back into the 1950s when they would bring Australian horses, stallions, into the United States as outcrosses. And an Australian sire produced 2 Kentucky Derby winners back in the 50s.
Okay.
And so then we produced, or actually the Canadians produced Northern Dancer.
Yeah, I remember that.
Then Northern Dancer stood in the United States and Canada, actually Maryland. And yet his influence on the European bloodstock has been amazing. And then I mentioned it earlier, Bold Ruler through Nasrullah and Near Arco. Nasrullah was a horse that was imported by Claiborne Farm, who became a dominant sire line in the United States. So it's this mix and match and movement that makes the thoroughbred keep going. And you need these outcrosses and these new strains of speed to influence the next strain. And I know I touched on the Tessio book in another episode. Tessio, in his own words, he talks about if you breed Derby winner to Derby winner to Derby winner, it's very rare that does it because that's a stamina race. And so you need another line of speed to lift to next level.
Okay, makes sense. So you mentioned Jewel Princess, but are there any other horses in your stables currently that you believe will become influential sires or dames in the future?
Well, I think Mystic Dan's got a huge chance to be a very good stallion. He's very well made. He comes from the Northern Dancer line, and he very much favors the Northern Dancer line.
Got it.
And he physically looks like a Northern Dancer. But he's by an extended stallion through Into Mischief and Golden Sense, who's not very popular, although I like him. I just had another stakes winner about Golden Sense recently, Gold's Gold. But that horse is, well, go back to Harlan's Holiday, who is his grandsire. Harlan's Holiday was a horse that everybody kind of scratched their head about and wasn't sure. Well, he was by Harlan, not a sire of sires, but Harlan's Holiday had produced Into Mischief, and today he has a whole sire line that comes from his bloodlines. So Mystic Dan's got a great shot. We're gonna have to figure out how to get him better mares at some point, or really good quality mares. And that's the other thing that you can't predict on stallions, is you've got to find the base of brood mares that have talent or have quality to give them a real chance to produce runners.
Kenny, there's big money in that game too, right? I mean, somebody's paying. I know that there's a term called stud fee, and I would assume that if somebody wants to breed a mare with Mystic Dan, that's costly, right? There's big money in this game, right?
Well, the Sire Business is a whole nother level. I mean, if you're successful on the race course, then you go to the Stallion Barn. But even the Stallion Barn is another very slippery slope, and you've got to get lucky in the first few crops that you get top horses, and you've got to get a sire. He's got to kickstart early, or they'll forget about him really quick.
So when it comes to betting, just your average bettor, what can you look at from a pedigree standpoint that can help you from handicapping horses?
Well, really good players will look at the pedigree and make sure that the horse is running on the right surface, right distance.
Okay.
People that have deep knowledge about breeding and gambling, and that's rare actually. Usually it's two different worlds.
Yep, sure.
But if you know the difference, I mean, we used to claim horses that were running the wrong distance, wrong surface, and did great with them because the trainer didn't really know what distance they should be running and maybe not surface. And I don't claim anymore today, but when I was younger, we had quite a bit of success stretching horses out, added distance, or in some cases shorten them up.
Why don't you claim anymore?
Too busy. I've got mostly all young horses, and it just gives us space issues claiming, and claiming. They usually claim off me at this stage.
Got it.
I'm not really interested in claiming horses. I'd much prefer developing young horses. It's something that I've really had a real success mark at. It's helped my success level, and really enjoyed developing young horses.
All right, Kenny, last question. This has been awesome. So, future of breeding. Where do you see the future of horse breeding going? Do you anticipate any major shifts in how breeders will approach pedigrees in the next decade or so?
Well, the Japanese are making a big push. They're buying all the best mares off of us. I mean, I've sold some really nice mares to them, and they have the best base of brood mares in the world. Although they don't have the numbers that we have in Kentucky, they are producing some fantastic horses. They had Sunday Silence. You're going to need Speed Influence still, but they're buying some horses that had a lot of talent and basically the better mares. But back to the thoroughbred being a hybrid, you've got to get speed from someplace else. Myself, I think the Australian horse would be fantastic to get some ultra fast Australian horses here and give them a base of mares to work off of. I'm still fond of the South American horse, although the racing down there is let's just say subpar mostly. Mm-hmm. Another one, you never know where a good horse comes from.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'm going to have to jump because I got two horses getting ready to breeze right now, and they are patiently waiting for me.
Let's go. Kenny, thank you so much. Once again, thank you for joining us for the Horses Now podcast. Download the Horses Now app. It has all kinds of information from what horses are running to betting info to you name it. You don't want to miss out, and hit that subscribe button. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
See you at the races.